Hello everyone, Eric Watson here for the Answer Player Games, Road Verge, recorded videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to This Week in D&D, where I break down the news surrounding Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and the tabletop RPG industry. This is the week of June 19th, 2025, and holy shit, do we have a big piece of news that hit just earlier this week that we definitely need to dive into, and will probably take up probably about half of this episode of This Week in D&D, which is that Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford have joined on with the Critical Role publisher Darrington Press. So this comes just a few months, I believe, because it was like literally like my first This Week in D&D, which was in like April or something, I think, covered the news of Chris Perkins leaving. So yeah, and you know what? That probably lines up with like the agreements that you have to make whenever you leave a company. That's like, hey, the non-compete or whatever for 60 or 90 days or something. So both of these pillars of Dungeons and Dragons game design over the last decade plus, they recently retired. I believe they both used the word retired. I'd have to go back and watch my own thing. When they left Wizards of the Coast this year, just, a couple months ago. And now Darrington Press has announced that they have signed on with these two dudes. So this is a pretty big win, I would think, and I would think most people who follow Dungeons and Dragons, for the Critical Role publisher. Well, before I get into my thoughts, which I have many of, let's actually just look at the official news, which the LA Times has one thing, but I want to look at the actual press release from Darrington Press. Chris Perkins is going to be creative director, and Jeremy Crawford is going to be game director. So obviously those are pretty high-level roles. Both of these very, very senior game designers. Thrilled to welcome both Chris and Jeremy's expertise in game design and storytelling, honed through decades of experience working together on tabletop games such as D&D, Star Wars RPG, Warhammer, and Blue Rose. We are enormous fans of their work and are honored to welcome them into our team. Let's see. Perkins says, storytelling has always been at the heart of everything I do, and joining Darrington Press feels a bit like coming home. I have loved being a part of the extended Critical Role family as a regular guest over the years, and I'm beyond excited to help create new worlds full of adventure. So specifically mentioning creating, which that's what they do, right? You don't hire these guys just for the mechanics, although they do. I mean, they are architects of the 5th edition game books. Like, I think, what is it, Crawford does the Dungeon Master's Guide and Perkins does the Player's Handbook, or vice versa. I forget which one is which. I think Perkins does the Monster Manual as well, and especially, I mean, and that was the thing, right? They did all the 2024, the 5.5e, whatever we're calling it, and then that shipped, and then they retired after that. So that's not unusual or crazy. Like, I know there's a lot of fun, like, we want to lean into the drama of it all and be like, oh man, they were like poached or whatever. But they do stress the fact that they were looking to retire for basically the last couple of years and looking for the right time to do it. Now, granted, part of that might be because, hey, the culture at Wizards is changing or whatever, but I think both these guys were literally in this company for over a decade, and like that's kind of getting to be unheard of. I feel like, especially with my generation and younger, I'm an older millennial. There's just not a lot of company loyalty, and certainly it's that goes both ways too. Companies also don't really give a shit about their employees much anymore. So it's just it's more unusual for people to like stay on and be like super brand corporate person versus kind of just going around to whatever one is gonna do the best for you. So the fact that they were there for that long, I think, is commendable in of itself, and I don't think it's anything unusual about them leaving at that time. Of course, we don't really know. We're not privy to all the details necessarily. Crawford says, I'm always believed that great games invite everyone to the table, and that's exactly what excites me about joining Darrington Press. This team is passionate, wildly creative, and committed to building welcoming, connected, amazing, story-driven experiences. Can't wait to expand on what Critical Role has already created to develop some really fun and unique games. So, this bodes a lot of question. Are they going to start developing, adventures for Daggerheart? Or is Darrington Press more about like how much are they leaning into Daggerheart versus like we just want to create like multiple new game systems and have you guys actually build like the game designs around those systems? I don't think we quite know yet. But the possibilities are not quite endless, but there's certainly multiple possibilities there. There's a big LA Times article that covers this whole hiring. See if because there's some good quotes in here too. Perkins was creative director for Dungeons and Dragons. Crawford was game director. So literally, it's their same positions, which is very interesting. They literally signed them on with their same positions. Presumably, maybe similar salaries. I don't know if Darrington can pay them as well, but that's another thing. Is this isn't? It's also not unusual for, especially with creatives, right? When you have creatives that are part of a big corporate industry. This happens all the time in video games, right? Somebody's part of some big developer, and then they ship their big game. They've shipped a couple games, and then the big people behind those teams, they say, okay, I've done this part. I've done my due diligence in terms of going up the corporate ladder and gaining a bunch of skills and stuff. Now, but I don't want to do the rat race of having this gigantic team and being a part of this big cog of the wheel thing. Now I want to take all my skills and knowledge and passion into a smaller team that's more back at what, is the earlier stages of growth, basically. That's a tale as old as time when it comes to a lot of creatives in any creative industry. And I think we're seeing that now because these dudes, I think they're only in their 50s, and 50s is not fucking young. The older I get, the older ages are, admittedly. But they've still got a lot of career left. So I don't think that's unusual at all that they're moving on to, even though they have, honestly, it's like a soft retirement that I think a lot of creative folks go to also, because this isn't, they don't want to stop doing what they do because it's fucking awesome what they do, frankly. But they want to stop doing it as part of a larger corporate culture and instead go towards another organization who, granted, the awkward thing about the capitalism structure is that like eventually we all, if you're successful enough, you grow also to a very big corporate culture, but then you just quit that one and go to another small one. Let's see. The news will be joining Critical Role's Darrington Press. Perkins. Okay, so this is a different quote. I was committed to staying with Wizards until after D&D's 50th anniversary, which was in 2024, which gave me lots of time to work on succession planning and exit strategies. What brought me out of retirement was the chance to work with Jeremy and the brilliant folks at Critical Role on things that have a lasting positive impact on the world. Certainly, it also helps that these two dudes apparently really like working with each other. So the fact that they could join up together in the same organization was probably a easy sell. And then Crawford says, Chris and I talked about his retirement plan for years. So that, I don't think there's a lot of drama here, in other words, with them leaving and joining. So his approaching departure was long on my mind. When we sent the new D&D rule books to the printer last year, I felt it was time to explore a new chapter for myself. So he knew Chris was leaving, and he's like, this is probably a good time for me to leave as well. I love the game and its team, but 18 years! Holy crap! I had no idea he was there that long. 18 years in any company is fucking crazy. Again, especially for my generation and younger folks, like that is absolutely insane, I think. The chapter that we've now opened feels like coming home, resuming work with Chris, and returning to Southern California. Probably a little bit nicer than rainy Seattle. Travis Williams says some quotes. Two of the biggest names that we're certainly aware of, influenced tabletop RPGs in the games that we played. We're over here making cool, nerdy things. If it's ever of interest to come over to Critical Role and mess around with what we're doing, we'd love to have a conversation. Yeah. All those things from the granddaddy system of them all. It's funny how people always avoid using the actual term Dungeons and Dragons. It's a chance to level up everyone around here as well. Critical Role creates, this is Chris Perkins, Critical Role creates wonderful entertainment that is deeply meaningful to the people who work there and to fans around the world. What brought me out of retirement was the chance to work with Jeremy and the brilliant folks. Critical Role and things, I literally just said that earlier in the other one, didn't I'm repeating the same quotes, which is, let's see, is this a new quote or not? Okay, Crawford, Chris and I have had the pleasure of working and befriending members of Critical over the last 10 years. We admired their work and spirit. We approached us about joining them. We happily said yes. It meant we could continue our creative partnership in a company whose mission and people we believe in. Yeah, so these dudes love working together. Perkins and Crawford believe they have to be more people involved in not only playing, but creating the games. Their strength and diversity in a joint statement, diverse creators and diverse games help to create an industry that feels more inviting to everyone. The more people we welcome in the proverbial tent, the more powerful the industry becomes. I agree with that. Second, we think it's important for the industry to acknowledge that friendly introductory experiences are important for onboarding new generations of gamers. Okay. Third, we hope the industry never loses the joy of play. So many of us became game designers, game masters, and players because of the spark of joy we felt when we first tried a role-playing game. Let's continue to fan that spark into a flame that fills everything we do with infectious delight. And then there's a tease that they are already ideas brewing for Darrington and the duo. So we don't mention Daggerheart specifically, right? I feel like that's the only thing I wanted to know about, which I guess is still too early to say, is like, are we going to be, are they designing adventures? Are they specifically doing Daggerheart? Are they designing game mechanics and new RPG? Because didn't Daring, so I don't follow, admittedly, Critical Role super closely, honestly, which is weird because my algorithm is constantly like trying to be like, why aren't you following Critical Role? I'm very confused. I just don't have the time, frankly. But I know that they released another one for Darrington, right? They published Candela Obscura, I believe. And I think it came and went with like little fanfare, so I'm not sure there was much going on there or what it was, what the theme. I didn't cover it, basically. I wasn't really aware of it. And now Daggerheart's come out, which seems like it's getting a little bit more attention, certainly because obviously of it's a fantasy RPG, so it's got to be compared to D&D, and obviously Critical Role folks have a huge connection to D&D. So my big question when it comes to Darrington Press is, are they going to really start expanding on the Daggerheart thing, or are we just going to create a bunch of other new little systems and maybe just try and see which ones kind of take off? I don't know. Either way, I think I am interested in covering Daggerheart a little closer. I mentioned it in a previous This Week in D&D stream, which was the first time that I had looked at it. It's a little more narrative, I guess, less crunchy. That's still a term people understand when it comes to game mechanics, which is just like rulesy. It's such a weird term. My game needs rules. But I mean, there are games that are just a little bit more like abstracted, and like they don't use, like they don't use tactical combat, for example. There's no like, maps or grids or things needed. So I think for me and my group, that would be a tougher sell because we play so much on a virtual tabletop, and I think it's harder, in my opinion, to have success with a more narrative-based game when you have webcams and computers versus having a visual space, having the grid map and all of that to help engage the players and immerse everybody into the situation. I'm not sure you could even create like, I don't know if it would be worth having like maps and stuff when it comes to a system like Daggerheart, for example. So I'll look at it, and certainly I can cover it. I think it's in Roll20, but it's like with the what was it, the Nexus thing. So it wasn't like natively in Roll20, but it was on like the Nexus, which is like the D&D Beyond for other RPG systems. So I need to figure out how I can look at that, basically. Something that works for more than a minute. Yeah. Perkins has been with WotC for a long time, decades. Damn. I didn't know it'd been that long. I guess in terms of their like senior game design, they've been they've been there for throughout 5th edition, I believe, and certainly they've become like the personable faces of D&D game design, right? In the era of YouTube and having, the last decade specifically, and having designers come on and talk about the stuff and promote it instead of just like, what's interesting is they don't really, instead of having like just a marketing person or like an overall narrator, they literally have the game designers, Perkins and Crawford, come on and talk about new releases. And I always thought that was a really, really cool way of introducing that content. You could tell those dudes are really passionate and smart about it. I don't always necessarily agree with, their rules stuff, or even they've designed adventures personally that I haven't necessarily enjoyed, but I really respect the hell out of their knowledge base and their passion for everything. So yeah, I think when they left, that definitely left a big hole. Also, wasn't it true that Wizards like literally put out like a LinkedIn thing where they were like trying to replace them, like instead of trying to promote somebody from within? But yeah, and if Perkins was going to be leaving for a while, like retirement, like this shouldn't have been like a huge shock. So that's kind of awkward, because ideally you always want to be, if somebody is like active about leaving, like the best thing you want to do is try to groom. Groom is probably wrong. We always use groom in a very bad context, but like what's a better mold someone to mentor, teach somebody to fill your shoes literally before you leave. And I'm not sure that's happening. And yeah, we're going to get to another piece of news that's not actually on my docket, but the fact that Wizards actually just lost some other folks as well. Lost as if it wasn't their fault. Chris Perkins' first published venture was on Dungeon Magazine. Okay, I did know about that. Yeah, I remember reading about that, or maybe listening to an interview with him or something. Was in Dungeon Magazine number 11 in 1988. Yeah, dude has been a super passionate game designer for a long, long time, and I think him joining the D&D team was obviously, Wizards was a passion for him, and the fact that we've seen that full run, and now he's. I don't think this is a shock. Basically, in other words, I think it's cool for the drama aspect of it. That like, oh man, they're joining this other rival. Is Darrington Press going to be the new Paizo? Is this generation's Paizo? I don't necessarily think so. But it certainly adds a lot more ammunition for Darrington Press. First of all, I don't think Darrington Press is necessarily set up to be able to compete immediately, but we'll see. If Daggerheart really takes off, I think we could see. The problem, I think, for any other competitor is that at least at the moment, D&D has never been more popular. Whereas I think and you all will probably be able to inform me better because I wasn't super locked into D&D at the time like I am now. At the time that Paizo rose to prominence, D&D was probably at its lowest point, which was going into 4th edition, which was, a lot of people like 4th edition. And what's funny is retroactively, honestly, 4th edition is like the Star Wars prequels. It's like retroactively they start, like, more and more people like begrudgingly are like, yeah, it was pretty good. It wasn't respected at the time, and now it's gotten better with age. That's like 4th edition. But at the time, at least from what I can recall, it was not very well received, and people really enjoyed 3.5 edition, and that's where Paizo was able to succeed with Pathfinder. I don't think there's an equivalent of that going on right now with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and I think the 2024 stuff has been generally well received. I know I have generally well received it because they didn't try to change too much about it, and they just kept it, kept all the stuff that worked and just kind of did like a patch notes like equivalent. It'd be like any of these ongoing video games that are have like season updates or something. It'd be like the equivalent of like a major like 2.0 update or something of D&D. So now it's like a games as a service thing, which again, if it's that popular, like why mess things around? Now we will see in the coming months and years, I think the effect of not having their senior, these two dudes basically there. So right now it's not too dramatic, but I think over the next like year or two, then we'll start seeing what this team can do now, and B, what the lack of having these guys is going to do to Wizards Coast. Because I don't have a whole lot of confidence, and I can't be the only one, the fact that Wizards just feels like they've squandered so many opportunities when it comes to stuff. And frankly, and a lot of people might even be coming at me and saying, well, Eric, like, I have this, and this many complaints about the 5th edition releases. Why do you keep deifying like these guys because they were there in charge of that? And I don't necessarily have a great answer for that. I know a lot of people, for example, complained about the Spelljammer release, the Planescape release, even the Vecna release haven't been, and it's hard to tell like how much of that is corporate meddling versus whose fault is that when it comes to the blame game. I don't know. I think we could all have probably a lot of fun, but also not really ever know the true answers to that. I think it'll be interesting to see a campaign. Hey, Jimmy, nice to see you. Interesting to see a campaign crafted by Perkins or overseen by him outside of the D&D box. We'll just be curious to see how different or similar to feel the D&D ones. That's a great point. I really hope. I mean, I can't imagine that they're not going to make some kind of adventure. Again, I don't know if they're going to be in the game design or the adventure aspect or like, world building or something. But I can't imagine you have these two guys on here and not have them make a damn adventure. Is it a Daggerheart adventure? Do they awkwardly just make 5th edition stuff? I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's weird because a lot of third party. We're just going to talk about this the whole time. A lot of third party folks like Kobold Press and a bunch of others, they have their own game system that they want to promote, but then they also kind of are obligated to create 5th edition versions of everything as well, because that's just the biggest system, that's everybody knows, and it's really hard to compete with that. So does Darrington Press feel like they have to do that with their adventure stuff? In other words, if they release... So the other interesting thing is if they release like an adventure book, do they have like, hey, here's the Daggerheart version, here's the 5e version? I don't know, because Daggerheart actually feels like it's significantly different than D&D, and maybe they want to just promote their own thing. That would also be interesting, I think. Jason also agrees that Perkins is definitely there for adventure creation. 4e felt more like a move towards video gaming with the addition change at-will powers, encounter, and daily powers. Yes, for sure. I think a lot of people called it like the World of Warcraft effect or something. Honestly, the more I read about 4th edition, the more I'm like, yeah, that was probably my jam, because I also come from video game backgrounds, frankly. And a lot of that stuff. And I've always thought the resting system is so awkward. And it's funny whenever they make D&D rules-based video games, including Baldur's Gate, that still uses the resting system. And it just... I don't know, it's just awkward, because like you have to put restrictions on rests at certain times, but then other times, and especially in Baldur's Gate, where it's like, oh, you can just click on this button and instantly teleport to your camp and then long rest. And in fact, that's where a lot of the story beats, are advanced on. Solasta had that problem too, where you could rest pretty much as you wanted to. You had to worry about like food and drink, but at very quickly early levels, it didn't matter. Pillars of Eternity was based on the D&D system. I always thought it was very similar to like a Pathfinder version where it was like just barely like off-brand D&D, and they also ran into... They did a thing where it's like you only had a certain amount of camping supplies, and you could only carry like 2 with you, so you could only long rest like twice while you were out, which seemed like a good idea, but then you would be able to expand those supplies, you would find them all the time, and it basically ended up being like you would almost long rest pretty much whenever you needed to. So I don't know. I've never, I think, found a video. Obviously a DM can restrict rest, and that's what I do because that's how you do it. But I don't think I've ever played a video game that used the D&D resting system in a satisfying way that felt like, okay, this is challenging and restrictive, but not overly so or whatever. Versus something like if you actually create a video game system like Divinity Original Sin, also by the Larian folks, that's just all cooldown based. And it works fucking amazing. But I don't know if you could do like cooldown stuff in a tabletop RPG either. So that's just a side rant. I would hope it'd be for Daggerheart or something new. I have to imagine that to be part of the allure for Perkins and Crawford. I think so. Yeah. So are they going hard? Are they going all in with Daggerheart? In other words, and I think that'll be interesting to see if maybe if like sales are taken off and stuff. I think they're poised at the right time. Obviously, Critical Role. I can't think of another group, I guess, that would be able to compete with D&D, right? Like Paizo's still doing its thing, and they're still good. I think they're still fine. It's a great company. They've got Starfinder that I think just came out in like their 2nd edition release or whatever. Pathfinder's in their 2nd edition. Paizo's still doing its thing, and there's some other competitors in there, but I definitely Critical Role is obviously and Darrington Press is their publisher. I think poised to probably be the best competitor that D&D has, and I think this is all a good thing. Like, you want to have the competitors in the space for that. You don't want to have just one single entity dominate an industry. You can have them blow up and be big because that will draw a lot of people into it. That's the World of Warcraft effect. and then you create a whole bunch of other things, and then a few, the sifter will appear, and then only the couple of good ones will float to the surface or whatever. In related news, oops, I'm skipping ahead. So Jess Lanzalo has departed, was the coach. She was the VP of D&D only since last year, but I think she's been with the company for a lot longer than that. She oversaw the launch of D&D's revised 5th edition, obviously because that was last year. Several leaders departed under her tenure. Oh yeah, this is from nworld.org, which covers a lot of RPG stuff. Wizards of the Coast posted 2 high-profile development roles seemingly to replace the pair. Yeah, so which instead of hiring from promoting from within. 8 years. He was there for 8 years. I've made the totally reasonable decision to leave a job where I got paid to argue about whether fictional lizard people can have tails. That's funny. She worked with Magic the Gathering, Chief of Staff, and going to be VP of Dungeons & Dragons franchise, which is either the best job title ever invented or proof that late-stage capitalism has finally achieved absolute absurdity. Take that, liberal arts naysayers. Okay, she's got an awesome little message here. Wizards turns imaginary worlds into real communities, which sounds fake, but is actually the most satisfying work in the world. Everyone who let me champion this mission while constantly asking, can you add more glowies? You are perfect, and I love you. She doesn't mention what she's going on to do. It would be hilariously amazing if Darrington Press picks her up for whatever reason. And then I think in related news, where was that? Todd Kenrick. This is GeekWire, I guess, because I couldn't actually find a news post about this. I guess he posted on Twitter, but I don't want to fucking promote Twitter. Todd Kedrick, a senior marketing strategist for the company's video content on social media channels, was laid off after more than 4 years. So that's actually different than the first 3 who all retired or resigned or whatever else. He was actually laid off, which is a little bit of a bigger deal. And that's still different from being fired, much different legally and everything else. And I believe Hasbro, he was part of a big laying off by Hasbro where they did some kind of % of their workforce. So Todd Kenrick, a lot of people should know, because if you've watched any of the, YouTube stuff that D&D has put out for the last, half decade or something, he's always the guy that's interviewing, usually Perkins and Crawford, basically about whatever else. If I'm being honest, I've never necessarily liked that format. I thought it would just work better if it was just the talking, like they do in like documentaries and interviews and stuff, where it's like the interviewer is not present, but the interviewee talks like slightly towards them off camera, and then only if there's a very specific question being asked do you even hear the interviewer. So I kind of wish they had just done that format, because to me, Kenrick didn't really add, I don't really talk shit about people, but he didn't really add anything to me with those that formatting, I guess. But I think he did a great job, I guess, running their social media channels and all of that part of it. I don't know why we needed to, I don't know, I guess, and maybe they're moving towards a different format without their 2, main dudes. Maybe they're thinking, all right, we don't need Kenrick talking to them now. Entire D&D team, thank the entire D&D for being some of the kindest, most talented and passionate people I've ever known. This was my dream job. Tabletop community has given me everything. Man, now I feel bad. That's sad. Laid off and saying this was my dream job. Ugh. For a lot of people, that would be. So, Wizards, what the fuck? Like, your D&D is as best as it's ever been, but, like, you've squandered Baldur's Gate 3 almost completely, from what I can tell, despite its, like, huge success. Somehow the D&D movie flopped, even though it was actually a damn good movie, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. I just don't understand. I don't know. A lot of them like the whole OGL thing, obviously, that hit them. Like, it's just, what is going on? Like, you guys should be riding this like gigantic success, and be putting out all of this just amazing content. Not forever. It's not sustainable, but at least in this moment, in the last like couple years, should be like riding high, and it seems to not be the case. Ooh, Jason got my Daggerheart book. Looks great, but probably will never get to actually play it. Oh no, does that mean I need to run Daggerheart game? Back in my day, the wrestling was simple. You got a D3 of HP back every day. None of this getting all back in one little nav stuff. No, I don't want to be that much of a pain in the ass. And I know like gritty realism, whatever wrestling rules exist, and I think there's a compromise to be had there. In fact, I basically do that when it comes to travel. I think I do the gritty realism thing. Jimmy makes an important point, says you don't have to be a D&D killer to be relevant or good. That's true. That's true. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff people like. There's like Blades in the Dark. What are somebody name me some good other RPGs that people enjoy? Call of Cthulhu, I think, is still pretty popular. Vampire the Masquerade. Shadowrun's still going on. I think they're in like 6th edition now. There's a bunch of them. I mean, we're playing the Alien RPG that just did its 2nd edition. Just is on Kickstarter. Just came out on Kickstarter. Bet there'll be a video game release using Daggerheart at some point in the future. That would be interesting. Yeah, Jason said that'll be hard considering how narrative the game is. I mean, what you could do is maybe make it more of a text-based adventure, I guess. I've always believed great games invite everyone. I think it has to do with corporate diversity stance. Oh, yeah. Maybe. I mean, that gets into a lot of, like, you know, theory crafting about what's going on behind the scenes. That's certainly a depressing one, and it wouldn't shock me necessarily, too. A lot of corporations are backpedaling on that. Sad to see that D&D is falling off due to their own ineptitude with the party over the past few years. We all know D&D from back in the day. Once they quit trying to change it, we'll be back. I mean, even during the worst parts of D&D, like, it never went away. Like, it was always still one of the biggest ones around. I think literally the only one I can cite, and maybe that was the case years ago before I was really paying attention, but is that I think at one point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Pathfinder actually sold more than D&D when it came to the... I mean, it's still a very small space in general. I think that was the case for like a year or two. And then they started designing D&D Next. Or one D&D. What did they call it? D&D Next, I think? Exactly. All right. One thing I can look at... Where is my... There it is. This is just some random news. One of the D&D games that we're just talking about how Wizards of the Coast have been dropping the ball with not being able to take advantage of their own incredible popularity right now. There was a video game RPG just known as Project Dante that was actually canceled, I think, years ago. I don't know this website, MP First, but this was the first to reveal this information. So the game was announced in early 2021, but 2 years later it was reported that Wizards of the Coast canceled a bunch of video game projects. And one of them was this one called Project Dante by Hidden Path Entertainment. Hidden Path Entertainment, by the way, is a weird developer to tap for this. Like, they... Literally what I knew them from and what people probably know them from is either Defense Grid, which was like the original popular tower defense game back forever ago, like 15 years ago, and they made a Counter-Strike game, Counter-Strike CSGO. So they worked very heavily with Valve. And then if you look at their like Wikipedia, like they've basically not done any. I mean, they made Defense Grid 2, a game called Witchblood that I'm not familiar with, and a game called Brass Tactics. It looks like they're maybe VR games. So it's, I don't know, it's a bizarre, developer to make a D&D RPG, I guess. They did not officially confirm the cancellation until a year later. One of the studio's founders posted on LinkedIn explaining the game's termination is due to funding problems, which led to the layoff of 44 employees. And like a lot of video game projects, they never saw the light of day. Because that's part of the process where the designers, the owners, or whatever, just want to scratch everything and just delete it from the universe. So that's such a fucking weird thing, by the way, to be, a young game designer or something to work on this game for like a year or two, and then all of a sudden your bosses come down and say, "Yeah, we're pulling the plug. All of your work was completely wasted, and nobody ever gets to see this." Like, fuck, how... And now you see why people were like, "Oh, well, maybe I want to go join my own indie company where at least we know we can make a game." Like, that's... I can't even imagine going through that emotional roller coaster. So Project Dante, third person gameplay. We only have screenshots we can show, I think. Mission to find a temple, melee and ranged combat. Okay, is this a picture of it? Or is this a video? 2 other characters. This is an embedded video, I think. Alright, maybe we can play it and maybe check it out. I have no idea if this has music on it or not. Okay, it looks like an action version of Baldur's Gate. It's like real-time action Baldur's Gate. Oh, there's like damage numbers popping up. Which means it probably doesn't use any of the rules. Maybe just the... Alright, dude, you went back to the rock. I do like the little kick though. This is 8 minutes long, good lord. Alright, maybe we should skip ahead. What you got, buddy? You got a crosshair. Okay, take the bow out. Oh, your other things disappear. That's awkward. I was hoping we'd see a jump and arrow shot. Slow-mo. Can you swap party members? Because that's what I really want. I want to play fucking Dragon Age Origins, where I can pause the game and swap party members, queue up all my shit. Don't make games like that anymore. I'm not even seeing any pausing. Is that like a Captain America shield going by? Alright, let's skip ahead a little bit.
I think 2 people need to rock.
This is... I don't know how they were able to even release this. Because usually they want to bury this kind of crap. The graphics are good. The lighting, not so much. Somebody get a torch. Alright, it's mostly dudes running around the map. Okay, this is like the dude's reel. Oh, that's awesome. He's the music supervisor, I guess.
So it's blood you want.
Alright, that's badass though. Look at this cutscene, that's fucking cool.
Then let's have
it.
What?
Man, this was...
Where did you...
This is pretty fucking far along. I expected more like, I don't know, placeholder stuff. Like, this is full voice acting, everything. Why was this canceled, you bastard? I mean, sure, just do like fucking real-time Baldur's Gate, why not? So who posted? I didn't even say. Just says former Hidden Path employee, okay. Concept reveals a wide array of creatures. Oh, wow. Is this the... Okay, there's a huge bunch of concept art, too. Don't know the exact date of all this material, particularly the gameplay select originates from its final development version of 2023 just before its cancellation. Fortunately, it appears this ambitious project will never come to fruition. Yeah, and they had to lay off a bunch of employees about it. And we don't know why it was I mean, just didn't... Oh, look at the Tressum. Flying cat. I guess it just got too... I mean, these games, you know, a game like that, it's not cheap to make. This concept art's badass though. Fuck. It just makes me sad. I know. I can't believe they haven't made Neverwinter Nights 3. That's another great example of something like waiting right there. Like, how can you not make... And yeah, exactly what you're saying. 5e and real-time turn-based gameplay. I assume you mean like real-time with pause. Would sell a ton. They could do microtransactions with skins and map packs. Yes, yes! Like, that whole thing was like way before its time, basically. But they were trying to sell like DLC before that was a thing. You could release Neverwinter Nights 3, have a base campaign with it, have an actual developer, who's made RPGs, give us a base level campaign and be like, hey, if you just want to play like a D&D campaign, here you go. But the real draw is going to be the tools that we put on top of it that allow a live DM to run the game, while the other players are playing also, which other game developers have done. I think Larian did it with Divinity. There was one other D&D game called like Sword Coast Legends or something where they tried doing something similar. I don't remember if Solasta does it or not. And then B, allow people to just straight up make their own, modules and stuff, just like Neverwinter Nights did, and upload it and do all that. And you could create this long-tailed, like, Skyrim shit, basically, like, that people have infused all these mods and... First, let people make their own free mods and just completely go nuts with the game, because that's how you create goodwill and create a long-lasting video game. Even though they're pretty sticklers about their IP, I'm sure. But also you can sell your own official stuff, which adds all that and, comes with its own, whatever, voice acting and everything else. Sell that for money. And then maybe, down the road in like 2 years or something, then you come up with the premium mod program and allow the most talented of the modders to sell their mods, which is pretty much the exact path that Elder Scrolls has been on. Like, that seems so obvious to you and me that like it's just frustrating, because that would be a huge success if done well. And you could call it Neverwinter Nights 3 and like build upon that legacy like we did with Baldur's Gate 3. But instead of it being emphasized where it's, hey, this is an amazing single player / co-op campaign, instead you say, hey, this is a fine, campaign to play through, but what we're really selling here is this huge toolbox to be able to create your own adventures and experiences using all the tools that we've got here, instead of doing necessarily trying to make their virtual tabletop, which also don't even get started on how they fucked that up. Like, this should have been a slam dunk, but do it via a video game. Fuck yeah. It seems so obvious. But shout out to Neverwinter Nights 2 that I covered last week, which is getting an enhanced edition that I totally want to replay. All right, the final thing I want to cover also came out this week, which is they're previewing another of the Dragon Delves adventures. So I think it was either last week or week before that where I covered, they did one of the early ones called Baker's Doesn't from Dragon Delves, one of the adventures they're previewing on D&D Beyond, and now they're doing another one. This one is in the opposite end of the spectrum where it's later levels. This is Shivering Death, so there is going to be some spoilers here if you plan on playing these as a player. I'm just going over whatever they're going over at the D&D Beyond update post here, but they do mention there are minor spoilers, so basically telling you what it's about. This one actually goes into fewer details, I think, than Baker's doesn't. So, for example, we don't even have like any maps or anything like that. It just kind of gives you like the concept of the adventure. So this is the level 11 adventure, and also it shows off the art, and as we've mentioned before and seen, all of the art is like very distinct and unique, and has different artists for every single adventure. So they all have very different art styles. So this is Shivering Death, which is named after the adult white dragon that's involved in this adventure, whose name is Chillidax or something, but they're called the Shivering Death, which is cool. The concept is a terrible heat wave is drying up the land, but a sage believes she's found a solution. There's a frost giant druid. Let's say that 3 times fast. Frost giant druid, frost giant druid, frost giant druid. That was trying to develop a ritual to impose an ice age on this area. That's a little extreme, but was frozen by a white dragon before he was able to cast the spell. The sage believes that performing this ritual will cancel out the current unprecedented heat wave. Okay, I don't know if an ice age seems... I mean, maybe. It's a pretty big reach. I feel like that would destroy everything if you go from heat wave to like ice age, though. That's pretty bad. I get sick just when the temperature changes by like 10 degrees. The characters must infiltrate the dragon's lair, locate the body of the frost giant druid, and obtain the ritual, then get out in one piece. So it's like a heist, sort of. Which, I mean, that's a fun concept. It's interesting that they're told, like, hey, there's a frozen frost giant that we need to get out of this dragon's lair. They give them that all that information up front. And then what makes it interesting is that there are 2 different factions that are also after this frost giant druid, which are just a group of frost giants that split into 2 different factions. One of them wants to slay the dragon. Chalidax is the name. I want to say Chilidax. And the other hopes to ally with her. So that means there are frost giants that are willing to socialize with the party and are, they say happy to chat. I didn't think frost giants were the most sociable giants around. I don't, but I guess we could have some fun with that. And then the other is just literally attack you on sight. So, and frost giants are no joke, but it is level 11. The adventure focuses on action and exploration while still providing plenty of opportunity to trick, parlay with, or outwit opponents. It will feel like any sort of beast, ally, or treasure could be behind the next corner, with ice mephits, winter wolves, and frost giants, and even more dangerous foes. Obviously very icy themed. Will the party attempt to make a deal with Chalidax, disrupt her budding alliance with some of the frost giants, or ally themselves with the frost giants looking to slay her? And can they end this catastrophic heat wave before it's too late? And talks about the white dragons and how it uses the new artwork from the monster manual, which I do love, that it made the dragons all more distinct looking. The white dragon almost looks more like an owl bear, kind of more like have like big meaty paws and almost like that owl bear like mane of feathers, kind of. Just kind of nifty. The fact that they decorate their caves in like icy sculptures. Almost looks kind of like a bullet. Also a look, kind of a real like, I don't know, like torpedo shaped head. Shivering Death is a deadly adventure that forces players in an unforgiving environment, which is the home of a white dragon. The art color scheme reinforces the effect using almost monochromatic shades of icy blue. Yeah. Talks about the artwork for a while, and then the dragon design. DM preps. Classic perilous feel of a dungeon crawl when incorporating dangerous environmental conditions. At level 11, this adventure is a higher tier of play. Pretty much the highest tier, according to Wizards, since we don't go much above that level. As a dungeon master, you want to keep the possibility of danger. Chalidax herself assists you here as she's decorated her lair with the frozen corpses of her foes, running a chilling warning of what might await them. Most of the adventure takes place in this one location, which I imagine is probably how most of the Dragon Delves adventures go, right? I'm kind of picturing more of the like layer concept where it's like, here's a single dungeon crawl area. Not necessarily all of them, probably the lower levels maybe have you going around to different things as you help dragons more than anything. But I mean, just it's a classic dungeon crawl in a dragon's lair. And helping ensure you don't have to spend too much time preparing to run the adventure. That's, yep, definitely true. Handy reference charts. And then if you need to slot it in your existing campaign, quest giver can be from any rural community near hills or mountains, making this adventure an easy side quest as your party travels from one town to another. They do mention the first chapter of the anthology book provides suggestions for wrapping everything up into one big campaign. I have always been pretty disappointed in how they've tried to do that in all their anthology stuff. Some of them work a little bit better than others. Most of them just don't. But I do recall reading that a lot of the feedback they've gotten and a lot of how at least Wizards operates is like, hey, most people don't actually run full pre-published campaigns. Most people run their own campaigns and then want to supplement that with little side adventures that you can drop in, which is why these anthologies tend to be pretty easy releases for them. My counter to that would be like, we'll make better fucking campaigns and we'll run those. I'll run them anyway because I prefer having all that stuff ready to go. But yeah, do better. Dragon Delves comes out July 8th. very, very soon. So that's why we're in full like promotion tour. Are you trying to scroll? You're like, Eric, scroll down, damn it. I need to see more. So I don't know if we'll, maybe we'll still getting more previews like this. It's interesting that they're doing it this style. I know with like previous anthologies, they'd release like an entire adventure or like half an adventure, but maybe here instead, we're just getting little snippets of some of the adventures to give us an example. Maybe that's not a bad idea of doing it too, like a preview. I mean, certainly the art and the concepts can help sell people a lot, but I'll be covering it regardless because obviously it's the next big adventure. The first one I think we've had all freaking year, and the first one we've had post 2024 as well. All right, folks, that is all the news that I am going to talk about this week. We've got the Crawford Perkins news, which was big, and then just a few little pieces like that Project Dante, and then of course the Shivering Death preview. All right, thank you all so much for joining me, and thank you, of course, always to the patrons for helping to support this channel. Shout out to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Thomas, Brandon, Genocider, Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Big Nut, John, Nathan, Andrew, Stephanie, Jason, Lumpy Spuds, Warden, Unimona LLC, Tom, the Dogs, Marcus, Snuggy, Hugo, Jay, Shasa, John, and Gold patrons: RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Desert Lounge, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, Scott Rufus, Jerry Glenn, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support. As a reminder, no live session tomorrow on Friday. All my jerk friends are on jerk vacations, so, and we'll actually be going on vacation also this weekend. So there's not gonna be any Alien RPG this week, so you won't see me again until next week, unless of course you sign up for the Patreon game, in which case you'll see me tonight. All right, bye.